Okay, folks, going to get our program rolling this evening. So, thank you for attending, and hello to all. My name is Bill Joyce. I'm the chair of the Pasadena group, and we are presenting a Sierra Club program tonight at the Eaton Canyon Nature Center. It's a presentation all about rooftop solar. And we have with us tonight Morgan Goodwin, who is our senior staff director at the chapter. And he's going to be pretty much emceeing our program tonight. He will introduce the evening's our program speakers and provide us all with Sierra Club's own take, on the status of rooftop solar policies. Joining us tonight also are Callie Underhill, Advocacy and Development Director of the Solar Rights Alliance. And we're also very happy to have Gary Deems and Rocky Reinerson of Swell Energy. And they're gonna talk some more to this topic. Now then, also we have some guests, and I want to allow them to come up and talk about some of the things that they're going to inform us about before we start our program. Okay, so first off is Peter Eisenhardt. Would you like to come up and talk to us a little bit about Pasadena 100, because they've had a recent success, and then I'm going to bring up Bob Spears. So Peter Eisenhardt.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So George Vine and Eric Peterson asked me to give you an update on the Pasadena 100 Coalition, which is made up of 24 local nonprofits, including the Pasadena group of the Sierra Club. And you may remember that Cynthia Kennedy, who leads the Pasadena 100 Coalition, spoke here actually last September. At that time, we were trying to collect over 1,000 postcards to the City Council from Pasadena residents supporting the Coalition's goal of 100% carbon-free electricity in the city by 2030. On October 24th, at Pasadena City Hall, we handed in over 1,300 of those postcards, so we exceeded that goal. And the good news that was just referred to is last month, in January 30th, the Pasadena City Council voted unanimously to approve Resolution 9977, declaring a climate emergency and setting a goal for the city of 100% carbon-free electricity by 2030. So that's quite a big step, and the Sierra Club's support was a big help. And I want to especially thank George Vine for his tireless legwork week after week for our coalition. And also, I want to call out Teresa Cheng of the state organization, I'm not quite sure, state, who sent just an amazingly detailed letter on how to actually make this work. And that we had a lot of letters of support, but I think that letter was the single most impressive one of all of them. So this is an ambitious and a meaningful goal, because currently more than half of the city of Pasadena's electricity comes from coal and gas, and there's actually still a fair amount to do to ensure that Pasadena Water and Power, which is the Pasadena City's utility, follows through to make this goal a reality. But we have taken an important and really a giant step in the right direction for climate action. So just a little bit on the very latest, PWP, Pasadena Water and Power, is dragging their feet in responding. We had a public meeting, they had a public meeting last week, February 22nd, on the Power Integrated Resource Plan, which controls electricity purchases for the next 20 years. And they didn't really show any progress there, I would say, in responding to the City Council's direction to make 100% carbon-free electricity by 2030, the goal of the Integrated Resource Plan. So, in kind of to summarize, thank you, but the coalition, the Pasadena 100 Coalition, is likely to continue to ask for your support in making sure that we do complete this important step and reach the goal of clean electricity in Pasadena by 2030. Thanks.
now it's an update from the Mount Wilson Trail Race. You know, we run that Mount Wilson Trail Race every year, and Bob Spears is here to give us an update on the state of the trails.
Good evening. I'm Bob Spears. I'm one of the volunteers that works on the Bailey Canyon Trail and the Mount Wilson Trail. For those of you that have hiked the trail, you know that they took a big hit with the last water rains that have wiped out a bunch of stuff, and also the winds lately have dropped a lot of trees. I'm going to be up there tomorrow with my chainsaw so that we can get from the junction at the Hellespot further all the way up to Orchard Camp, because there are a number of trees down. The trails have taken a big hit because of the weather, and we are looking for some support to see if we can continue to purchase the materials we need to reinforce the trail. What happens is the side of the trail gets washed out, so we come in and drive T-stakes in and put in some fencing so that to slow the erosion and stop the erosion. And if you've hiked the trails, I'm sure you've seen it, and it just takes, time, energy, and money. That's all. And so, I have some cards that talk about the Fletcher Fund, which is a nonprofit organization that's part of the Sierra Madre Community Foundation. If you donate to the Fletcher Fund, and you can even donate via PayPal, you can deduct the donation, and we can draw on the money in order to maintain the trails. And that's what we use to buy tools and supplies. If you have questions about the trails, I can tell you that right now the snow was phenomenal. From the junction all the way up, there was a foot of snow at Orchard Camp. There was 18 inches of snow at the Manzanita Ridge. There are unfortunately a number of trees down which need to be removed, and I will get that as soon as I can. I'm a slower hiker now with a chainsaw on my back, but we will address all that. Bailey Canyon Trail is not too bad, but it's not really in perfect shape anymore. And the hike all the way up to the toll road from Bailey Canyon is passable, but not wonderful. So we have our work cut out for us. Any questions?
What are you going to do with that bridge?
So for those of you that have been up the Mount Wilson Trail, there is a bridge over a section. I built a bridge over a section that got washed out. The bridge is like 30 feet long. And we were lucky enough to have a work day where enough people showed up, and we hauled all the material up and put it up in a couple days. We're restoring the trail underneath the bridge. We're going to have to build some plateaus in order to do that. And then we will move the bridge up to First Water, because there's a stream crossing there. And the original Mount Wilson Trail goes down to First Water, crosses First Water, and goes back up to where, if you've ever been up to where the gauging station is, and then goes back up to connect to the existing trail. And if you've hiked the trail, you've seen a fixed rope as you go up and down on the uphill side. That is that's where, right above that is where the old trail intersects. For those of you who remember a gentleman named Dr. White, Dr. Bill White, who recently passed away, we just put a trail sign at the bottom of that where that T intersection is. For him, we're going to dedicate it with his family on the 12th at 10 o'clock. So we try to, put in signs. We try to make sure that the trail is always passable, can be used easily by the hikers, and that's what we're here for. Okay? So.
Our Pasadena group is very proud of our own outings program, and Pam Allen is our co-outings chair. She's going to talk a little bit about some of our upcoming outings.
Well, we have a number of outings planned for the next couple of months. Our most important one, I think, is our Henninger hikes, which happen every Thursday night for our conditioning hikes. So if you're interested in those, they are coordinated by our video person. He wears many hats. And we have, I've got a flyer here that's got a listing of all our hikes, and we've got the listing of them on our website. But if you want to know some more about them, I've got flyers here that you can have at the end of the meeting. And then one of the important ones that we've got coming up is April the 22nd, which is both Earth Day, and we're celebrating John Muir's birthday, and so we've got 3 different hikes doing that day. So that's going, and with a rendezvous at Muir Peak. where we will have lunch and a few things said. So, if you'd like a flyer later,
We have co-outings chairs because it's a big job. All right, Morgan. I'd like Morgan Goodwin, our senior chapter director, up. He's going to handle the rest of the rooftop solar meeting for us. Morgan.
So, good evening, everyone. I am the senior chapter director for the Angeles chapter. So I'm the senior staff person that coordinates all the Sierra Club activities and supports, really the members and volunteers who run most of the activities across all of Los Angeles and Orange counties. We have 14 regional groups, of which the Pasadena group is one of the better organized ones. And I just wanted to tell you, just to introduce myself a little bit. My grandfather was in the 10th Mountain Division. He was actually a mountain climbing instructor in the 10th Mountain Division, but he was also a mountain guide. And he started guiding people for money. For a quarter, he would take you on a half-day hike, and for $2, he would take you on a full-day hike to hike the highest peaks in the Adirondacks, where he spent summers as a kid. He ran a small organization that took people out on hikes, took kids out. Counselors would lead kids' hikes and canoe trips all summer. And my father ended up taking over that organization, and I got to go to his retirement party last summer. 35 years, he ran, the outings program that they had, the trail building program, and I got to grow up that way. And I got to grow up hiking all summer and canoeing and camping, and it's sort of in the blood as much as it can be. I also grew up in a time when climate change sort of emerged into the public consciousness, right? They were testifying to Congress about it in the 90s when I was, barely old enough to be aware of what was going on television. But by the 2000s, this impending drumbeat of this is sort of the defining challenge of our times became much more clear. And I joined the Sierra Club in 2007 when I attended a Sierra Student Coalition training. It was a week-long training in the summertime, and the kids leading the training were younger than me, but the content was so good. Like, we learned how to do media interviews, how to do lobby visits, how to run meetings, how to plan a campaign. And it's actually been so fun following along and supporting the Pasadena 100 campaign, because it's about as textbook as it gets. Like, when we were learning that campaign from those Sierra Club campaigners and students, basically they laid out, this is what you should do, and you all have modeled that just exquisitely. So we're going to be calling on this as an example, even as we support the ongoing Pasadena fight. What do we do in the face of climate change? That's the question I've spent the last 15 years grappling with, and that's why I work for the Sierra Club. We need to do a bunch of things. We need to reduce our emissions. We need to get carbon out of the atmosphere. We need to adapt our ecosystems as best we can. Reducing our emissions obviously requires a lot of work. And getting as much renewable energy onto the grid and electrifying our cars and our homes so that we can power them with clean energy is a key part of that. And so tonight we're going to go into a deep dive into rooftop solar, right, which is one of the pieces of that. It's a really important piece, and it's one that we all have access to. We don't really like to, as the Sierra Club, we're not here to compare rooftop solar versus industrial solar. We're actually very proud of the DRECP, the Desert Renewable Energy Plan, which is a really incredible agreement that governs how and where solar is developed out in the less populated regions of Southern California. We need that. And we also, frankly, need more transmission to get that solar in, because that transmission actually limits how much energy we can bring in from solar out in the desert. And that's where rooftop solar comes in. So we're huge fans of rooftop solar. We're huge fans of having those resources be local and distributed here. We're huge fans of people becoming more knowledgeable about how energy works, kind of taking control of their own electricity, educating themselves. And so I want to introduce our first guest tonight, Kaylee, if you want to start coming on up here. As a former local elected official, I was mayor and on the city council in Truckee, California for 5 years. And I got to experience firsthand just how slow the wheels of local government can grind. I saw permitting processes take months and months and months, and even longer sometimes. And so Kaylee is going to talk to us a little bit about the Solar Rights Alliance, which is the organization that she works for, and specifically how cities can make that permitting of solar way easier. So I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, but I'm really excited about this because this is a huge thing that we can do to make renewable energy much more accessible for everyone.
So my name is Kaylee Underhill, and I am the Advocacy and Development Director for the Solar Rights Alliance. For anyone who's unfamiliar, the Solar Rights Alliance is the nonprofit association of California solar users. Our official, unofficial motto is that we work to defend your right to make energy from the sun. That's what we do. As some of you may have heard, there have been some big developments in the world of rooftop solar this year. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background and tell you a little bit about some of the things we're trying to do in the face of those developments. So, first things first, just in terms of the state of rooftop solar in California, as Morgan pointed out, we need a whole lot more of it. The California Energy Commission has estimated that we need 3 times more solar than we currently have and 8 times more batteries to hit our clean energy goals. The backbone of California's effort to reach those goals has been a program called net metering. It lets solar users share their extra energy back to the grid, back to their community for a bill credit. And it's really the foundation of rooftop solar. The utilities don't like it. The reason the utilities don't like rooftop solar is that they make money off of the new stuff they build, off of the long distance power lines, off of related infrastructure. So as Morgan pointed out, the more solar you have on rooftops, the less of that stuff you need. You're still gonna need some of it, but the less of it you need. So the utilities really wanna kill rooftop solar. And they tried over the past 2 years, well, even longer, but in a really concerted effort over the past 2 years with a triple whammy. They wanted to pass a solar tax of up to $700 per year. They wanted to cut that solar credit by 80%, and they wanted to peel back protections for existing solar users. They wanted to make retroactive changes. In response to what the utilities were trying to do, the Save California Solar campaign rose up, and it was one of the largest grassroots efforts in recent state history. 170,000 people wrote, called, marched, testified, protested against what the utilities were trying to do. And a coalition of 600 nonprofit organizations, cities, schools, businesses, elected officials stood shoulder to shoulder, linking arms, saying this is not okay. This cannot stand. And so here's what happened. We stopped the solar tax, dead in its tracks. That's quite a big deal, because the solar tax really would have been the knockout punch. Who's going to put solar on their roof when they know they're going to get a special tax just for having done so? And it ensures that no matter what you do, battery, electric vehicle, what have you, the utilities would always be able to reach behind your meter and claw back that pound of flesh. So this was a big deal. We also protected the 1.2 million existing solar users from any changes for the duration of their original lock-in period. But in December, the CPUC voted to slash solar credit by 75%. So I want to just explain what that means, this cutting of the solar credit. And to do that, just a really brief review of how the system used to work, and then we'll talk about the thing that is coming down the pike here shortly. So the old system is referred to as NEM 1 or NEM 2, because there's been 2 versions, net metering 1, net metering 2. The concept here is that solar panels generally make more energy than a home needs. So when they make that extra energy, it flows back to the grid. And the utility then sells that extra energy to your neighbors and gives you a bill credit that's roughly equal to whatever they would have sold it to your neighbor. Right now, that's about 30 cents per kilowatt hour. That bill credit offsets the electricity that you buy from the utility when the sun is not shining. And you can stay on that program for 20 years from the date your system turned on. Pretty good deal. worked really well. The graphs were all heading in the right direction. And then the utilities got involved. The way the new system is going to work is called NEM 3. That's how folks tend to refer to it. And it'll be in place for anyone who goes solar after mid-April of this year. So like I said, they're going to get 75 to 80% less for their extra solar energy than current solar users. In real dollars, that's a drop of 30 cents per kilowatt hour to a nickel. That's a big loss. And so they're also going to be onto a rate plan with higher evening electricity rates, a time of use plan. The lock-in period only lasts 9 years, and because of the combination of these circumstances, that payback period for solar is going to jump from an average of 6 years to more than 10 years. And I see people running the calculations in their heads like, would I do that if I didn't have solar already? Is this something that I would choose to do? So first things first, just from a consumer perspective, there's a few things I just want to make sure everybody knows, and I hope folks share this information widely. If you don't have rooftop solar and you want it, if your original 20-year lock-in period is going to end soon, or if you are sitting here thinking, maybe I want to add some solar to what I already have, and you think you maybe want to add more than a couple panels, then this information is for you or people you know in these categories. By April 14th, a complete and correct interconnection application has to be submitted to your utility. Now, I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, Kaylee, what is a complete and correct interconnection application? It's this stuff. The interconnection application is a really normal step in the process of getting rooftop solar. So basically, the decision makers here had to say, okay, if we start with solar as a gleam in someone's eye versus actually putting panels on the roof, where do we say, yeah, they're far enough along that they should get NEM 2? And they decided, kind of arbitrarily, this is a good decision point. If they get this stuff in, they're far enough along that we'll let them get NEM 2 for 20 years. So first things first is a signed contract with a solar provider. Now, if you're a DIYer, okay, you don't need a signed contract. You can just skip that part. You also need to submit a single line diagram. You don't need to know what these things are. I'm just putting these up there so you have a sense of what's included. And there's a disclosure document that has to be signed along with a signed consumer protection guide. And that last part, an oversizing attestation, applies if you want to put more solar on your roof than the energy you currently use. That's the case if you were thinking of maybe buying an electric vehicle in the next year, or maybe you want to install a heat pump, and you're thinking to yourself, well, hold on, if I only get enough panels for the amount I currently use, I won't have enough. So this is you saying to your utility, I promise I'm going to purchase that thing in the next year, and I'm going to use the load that I'm putting on my house. So that's an optional document. So you can see it's not a lot, and I really want to stress that construction does not need to be completed by April 14th. In fact, the interconnection application is a use it or lose it ticket for 3 years. So you got time to put the panels on your roof. But we're now in a situation where we have to figure out, okay, given this decision by the California Public Utilities Commission, how do we move forward? First things first, the Solar Rights Alliance is doing everything we can to explore every opportunity to reverse or modify this NEM 3 decision where possible. And I just briefly want to talk about the 3 arenas where that could happen. Option number 1 is the legislature. It is possible that some of those individuals could act to change this. We don't think they're gonna. A lot of folks already wanted this to happen before the utilities did it. So that seems unlikely. The second arena is maybe picking up some traction, and that's the courts. 3 environmental organizations filed an appeal. The Center for Biological Diversity, Environmental Working Group, and, oh gosh, I forgot the last one. It will come back to me. Have filed this appeal. Protect Our Communities Foundation. I got it. Those 3 groups have filed this appeal, and it's in its first stages. That could well become a lawsuit, and that would be a very exciting moment for lots of grassroots efforts to try to support that, to reverse or modify this decision, because it is going to do a lot of harm. But it might go nowhere. We don't know. We are keeping folks surprised as we learn more. The third arena is a ballot measure. That would be really exciting. And we've crunched the numbers. Problem is that even though a ballot measure we think would be really popular, it would take a lot of dollars to run it, to the tune of about $5 million to get it on the ballot, and about $30 million to run a real campaign against the utilities. We don't have to match them dollar for dollar, but we gotta stay in the arena. So in all seriousness, if there are folks here who have that kind of giving capacity or who know people who do, we would love to have a discreet conversation with you about what that would really look like. We have reached out to our donors. We don't have any first takers yet. And to run it seriously, we'd need a couple people who have the capacity to give, $500,000 to $1 million. This is California. I think those people exist, but we haven't bumped into them yet. So in all seriousness, if you know someone, let us know. So that's what we've got in terms of what we can do to reverse or modify this NEM 3 decision. So here are the other things we can do. We can continue to fight like hell to ensure that the solar tax never sees the light of day again. Because if it does, that's the knockout punch. We have to stop the solar tax if we want solar to grow in California, if we want to hit those clean energy goals that Morgan was just talking about. We also think it's a good idea to make solar and batteries cheaper by cutting the red tape and by pushing for battery rebates. And the folks I'm going to hand it off to next are going to talk with you more about batteries, which is a really exciting part of the light at the end of the tunnel. Because think about it. If you have a battery, then all that extra energy that your panels produce just goes into your battery. And then when the sun goes down and the sun's not shining, you draw from your battery instead of the grid. So who cares how much the utilities give you in credit back? It's your energy and you're keeping it in your battery. So that's something that can really be a path forward. But right now, batteries are expensive for a lot of folks. And so trying to help lower that cost is part of what Solar Rights Alliance is trying to do. We also know it's really important to educate folks about their options so that people are operating with real information. We've gotten a lot of calls from people who say, I called my utility and they told me, okay, but here's the actual information. So I'm going to put up my contact information at the end, and I would encourage you to share it widely, to contact me if you have questions. We answer every call. We respond to every email. We want to make sure people have the information that they need. So, as Sierra Club awesome folks who are advocates and people who get involved in things and make change, there are a few specific things you can do to act on these issues. First is the good old letter to the editor. These actually are really powerful, both because they shape public opinion and the opinion of decision makers, but also because they guide what the media focuses on as time moves forward. So, if all your local papers get a bunch of letters to the editor about this issue, and then say this appeal takes off, they're gonna be paying attention already because you will have primed that pump. So that's a great thing that you can do. Keep it alive, relitigate it in the court of public opinion. You can also help to get the word out to consumers so they know what's happening and they don't miss this opportunity. April 14th is closing in. There's still time, but eventually there won't be. If the CPUC decision goes through, and it looks like it's gonna, that's the situation we'll have. The Solar Rights Alliance does have some resources. We have them available on our website, and they're also linked to this slideshow, which has been shared with George and Eric. So they'll make sure it gets to anyone who's interested in it. We have an FAQ, and we did a statewide webinar. It's about an hour long where we just talked through this thing. So people really understood all the details, and then we answered a bunch of questions that folks had, which I think serve as good exemplars for questions you might have. You can also join our current campaign to make it faster, easier, and cheaper for folks to go solar through streamlined rooftop solar permitting. So this is the last thing I'm going to chat about, just so you have a sense of one way that we can help kind of circumvent what the CPUC has done by making some of these important incremental gains where we can, especially in light of that decision. So, one thing to know is that one of the biggest obstacles to solar growth is actually the cost and the time that it takes just to get a permit from the city to install solar panels. And I see some people have apparently had that experience. So streamlining solar permitting can just cut that red tape, make it cheaper, make it faster, make it easier for people to install solar panels and batteries too. For context, this is not a small impact. When San Jose streamlined their permitting process, they saw a 6-fold increase in solar. Just take a minute and imagine if Pasadena just doubled their solar, let alone 6-fold. How awesome would that be? What a huge change this could be. And so we have a kind of special opportunity. There are a whole bunch of ways that a city can streamline their permitting. The federal government looked at this problem nationwide and said, perhaps we should come up with a solution to this. So they developed a free software system to address this exact issue, and they're rolling it out in all the states. And they're focusing on California and Arizona because, sun shines here. This is a sunshine state. And that platform is called Solar Automated Permitting Platform Plus, otherwise known as Solar App Plus. I was not on the naming committee. I would just like to say that. It allows homes to receive code-compliant permits automatically. And as I said, it was developed by the Federal Department of Energy in conjunction with all the folks you'd want to be involved on a project like this. The folks in the International Association of Electrical Inspectors and the National Fire Protection Association to make sure there's no loss in safety. This particular system is already in use in more than 20 jurisdictions across the state of California, and the permits pass inspection at a rate that is at or better than traditional permitting systems. It's easy, it's safe, it's totally free because it's designed by the federal government, totally free for cities to use. It is also the law. So a couple of months ago, the Solar Access Act was passed. For those of you who like to go read laws, SB 379. And it says that cities have to have streamlined, automated, instant permitting by September of 2023. Unless they're really small. Then they have till September of 2024. But basically, you got till September of this year. The state of California, recognizing that unfunded mandates are maybe not the best plan, put together a quite large grant package. So cities can apply for a grant to streamline their permitting. And they can use the grant to adopt Solar App Plus, to integrate Solar App Plus with their current system, or to just enhance what they already have. So if a city is really close to meeting that criteria, to complying with the law, they can use the grant funds to just comply, to enhance their system, to rise to the equivalent level of Solar App Plus. That's what the law states. You gotta either use Solar App Plus because it's free and it's there, you have at it, or you have to put funds into enhancing your system so it does the same thing that Solar App Plus will do. These grant funds are not small. The maximum amount is $100,000. It is based on population size. So there's no, for those of you who've written grants or are familiar with grants, it's just a 4-page checklist. There is no extensive application process. So we're working on this statewide with every single city and county in the state of California to try to get cities to comply with the law in whatever way works best for them. Solar App Plus, integrated system, enhancing what they've currently got. And we need your help. What we have found is that cities are really responsive to residents who go to their city councils or their board of supervisors if you live in an unincorporated county and say, hey, I heard about this law and about this cool thing you can do to comply with the law. And I heard there was grant money available to make this thing happen. Will you apply for the grant? And then it just leaves the city to decide how they're gonna use those monies to comply with the law. Pasadena is not in compliance and has not applied for the grant. South Pasadena is not in compliance and has not applied for the grant. Unincorporated LA County is not in compliance and has not applied for the grant. So we have a really easy 4-step advocacy process that we have found has worked just beautifully in pretty much all the cities and counties that we've tested it in. There seems to be very little opposition because mostly it's just about lack of education. Cities and counties don't know this is a thing they need to do, or they're not aware there's a grant to help them do it, or they honestly think they're in compliance, but they're just not with how the law is laid out. So if you are interested in helping to advance this where you live, be it any of the cities or the county I just named, or anywhere in California, so if you know someone anywhere in the state of California who might like to take some additional action here, please reach out to me. And I'm happy to share all the materials to do so. And again, it's a very easy process, 4 steps. Step 1 is meeting with me, having a conversation so I can catch you up on where your particular city is and what needs to happen. Step 2 is going to talk at a city council meeting or a board of supervisors meeting during the public comment period. 30 to 60 seconds. This is a cool idea, here's why I think so. Step 3 is asking your elected officials to just talk with you about it, to have a lobby meeting. And I can help you with that stage. We have templates for everything. And step 4 is following up and seeing what they decide to do. The vast majority of cities have said yes, and many have done it very quickly. So the last thing I want to say is this. The grant deadline is coming up quick. It is May 1st. For most cities, they're gonna need probably a city council meeting or 2 to decide this. So this is the moment to get engaged and to help these cities streamline their permitting, to make it faster and easier for folks to go solar, to drop the wait time for weeks, months, in really bad cases, sometimes years, to literally minutes. It's an instantaneous online permit. If you have more questions, I would be happy to answer them. My understanding, Morgan, is that we're gonna go straight to Swell, so you can hear from them, and especially the battery component of this whole concept, which is really important given what the CPUC has done. So I'm excited for you that you get to hear what Swell has to say, and I will be available after that or whenever I'm called back up here to answer additional questions. So thank you so much. These slides will be available, and I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. When I heard this presentation the first time a few weeks ago, I got excited because I like campaigns that are easy to win and everyone feels good about. One of our Sierra Club leaders down in Mission Viejo in Sierra Sage, Ed Maurer. Anyone here know Ed? Yeah, a few of us. It's a big chapter. He worked with Kaylee to get Mission Viejo city to pass the Solar App Plus, and he said it was like a couple council meetings. It was just like Kaylee described.
Yeah, and I should add, this doesn't take waves of people. This is not like the Save California Solar Campaign where it's hundreds and thousands of people. It's literally 1 or 2 people, sometimes literally 1 phone call from 1 resident to 1 city council member just saying, "Hi, I heard about this, sounds cool, want to do it?" And most city councils are like, "Yes, please. This is money that we can use to do this thing." It's an easy win. It's a checkbox, like you said. It's a win-win-win for building departments, city councils, and residents. So it's pretty straightforward. But Pasadena, South Pasadena, LA County, it's not happening yet. To be continued. Thanks,
To be
Morgan.
continued. So we'll definitely have time for questions and more conversation. But we're going to transition to our next presentation, Swell Energy here. Quick audience participation question. How many people here have solar on your home? Yeah, all right. That's almost half the audience. That's a pretty cool thing. How many people here have a home battery for your solar? All right. The lady in pink. That's awesome. So the Sierra Club Angeles chapter has a partnership with Swell Energy. And I just want to preface this by saying, as an activist who has spent all of my time working for nonprofits in the Sierra Club, partnering with companies is oh my God, should we really be doing this? Starting from the premise that we need as much solar as we can on as many homes and roofs as we can, we spent a whole bunch of time with the Sierra Club vetting Swell. And when I say vetting, I mean the number of forms and spreadsheets and applications and stuff that I went through between us and the Sierra Club National to make sure that these guys were legit. It was no small task, and we got there. So I want to invite you guys up if you want to start plugging in machines and whatnot. So we have Rocky and Gary, who are representatives of Swell Energy, and they're going to be talking about what you can do with that deadline that's coming up, right? Kaylee talked about the April 14th deadline. And these guys are here to say, we can do something. And they'll get to this in more detail, but because of this partnership with them, Sierra Club members get a discount off of solar with Swell Energy, and the Sierra Club Angeles chapter also gets revenue from those sales. And so we've had a number of people sign up already throughout the chapter, and we're excited to keep working with that. That's like a perk. That's a really nice part of this. But the core thing is really about, just educating ourselves. How does solar work? How do we get this stuff on homes? What does it mean for the grid, for energy bills? So with that, give a warm welcome for Rocky and Gary.
Hey, thanks for everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you, Sierra Club, for inviting us to be here. My name's Rocky Reinertson. This is Gary Deems. We're Swell Energy. And so basically what we want to start off with is a quick video just to show you kind of what a home battery is and what it does. It should take about a minute. Here we go.
Blackouts. Everything's going fine. Then, bam, you're in the dark. Some folks have an old-fashioned generator, but they're loud, dirty, and need to be fed gas. Now, there's a better way. The home battery. Using batteries like in your laptop or electric car, you can now have instantaneous backup power when a blackout hits. There's no noise, no pollution, just continuous power. It lasts over 24 hours. And if you've got solar panels, it keeps going and going. In fact, you can go off-grid entirely. But a home battery isn't just for emergencies. It can save you money every day by charging during off-peak times and automatically kicking in when electricity is most expensive. With a home battery, you ensure clean, secure, inexpensive power for your home. And with a battery in every home, we can take control of our power, together reducing our need for old, dirty power plants. To learn more about your home battery options, head to swellenergy.com today, and we'll show you a way out of the dark.
All right. So blackouts and our mission. Okay, our mission basically is that we're Swell Energy. Our mission is to modernize the grid. How are we going to do that? We're going to deploy as many batteries as we can throughout the country as possible. We're working right now in California, New York, and Hawaii. We want to make it easy for consumers to take control of their energy, achieve energy security, and save money. We're also going to stabilize the grid through virtual power plant programs. We can touch on that coming up. How are we going to do that? We're going to accelerate the mass adoption of clean energy technologies. Okay, blackouts and rate increases. Is there blackouts, anybody in the last year or so have any in this area? Not too many, right? We work throughout the whole state of California. It's incredible. It's really eye-opening how many homeowners go through blackouts, not just for hours at a time. It's for days and sometimes weeks. I actually have a friend up in Crestline that hasn't had power in 5 days, for 5 days because of this last storm. We can all agree, though, rate increases. Has anybody seen rate increases in the past few years or noticed that? It's funny, I had a notebook today, an old notebook that it was from years ago. I opened up and a bill fell out of it. It was from a past customer in Rancho Cucamonga. And I looked at the bill amount. It was $187. This is from 2018. And it was 836 kilowatt hours. That same bill today is $267. So that's a 45% increase just in 5 years. What's it going to be in another 5 years or 10 years? It's kind of scary to think about. Next one. That's all right. So there's a problem. I mean, there's not enough electricity at times, obviously, especially during the summer, for the supply or for the demand. Edison and other utilities are already coming out telling us there's going to be flex alerts. Flex alerts does anybody know what that is, or have they received one? I think last summer everybody got a text message, hey, we got to stop using your air conditioner, avoid appliances. It affects all of us, these things. And it's just going to get worse and worse as the demand goes up and the supply is down. Here's kind of something eye-opening. A lot of people don't know most of our electricity that we get is from natural gas. Almost 50% of it. The remaining 50% is either solar, nuclear, hydroelectric, or wind. That kind of gets me to the next slide, where we're right now at a crossroads. our demands are getting, for electricity is more and more every year. It seems to be getting hotter every year. I'm not sure if that's really the case, but it seems like summertime lasts longer. I'm using air conditioning into the end of October nowadays. We're working more remotely from home. Electrification of homes, electric vehicle mandates, all of these things are going to have a demand. And with that last slide, we're showing that there was most of our electricity is produced from gas, and they're cutting, gas and nuclear power plants. So where is this electricity or this power going to be coming from?
Yep. So I know some of you have solar. One of you has batteries. How many of you folks are Southern California Edison customers? Okay, more than I thought. So I'm assuming the rest of you either LADWP, Pasadena, Glendale, Burbank, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the utility rate structures, but this is specifically geared towards the Edison customer. But I'll make some notes for those of you that are on the municipal utilities, so it'll help you understand. Okay. Yeah. Left. There you go. So currently, the old way that a lot of Edison customers and some of the municipal utilities, they have a tiered structure. So you have your tier 1, your tier 2, and your tier 3. For those in tier 1, they give you a baseline allotment of kilowatt hours at the lowest cost per kilowatt. Typically on the Edison side, it's roughly 23 cents. You may have 300 kilowatt hours allotted for a month in that tier 1, but once you use those kilowatt hours, you get dropped into tier 2, and there's a higher cost. So that structure is based on a month, and then as you get into the higher usage surcharge, ultimately you're paying a larger cost, but that goes over the course of a month's period. On the Edison side, in today's market, they have what's called a time of use account, and you're going to start hearing TOU, time of use, and that's based on a 24-hour clock where you have a off-peak charge and an on-peak charge. So you're still paying for the kilowatts, but there's a window of time, and typically it's 4 to 9 p.m. that the rates are higher. So that's your on-peak. But the bulk of the day from midnight to 4, you're at off-peak, and then at 9 o'clock on, you're at off-peak as well. So it's based on a day, and the old way is based on a month. This is an example of December and January billing cycles on the Edison side. As of December 2022, on the tiered structure, you had a per kilowatt charge in tier 1 of 23 cents. Once you allocated those 200 or 300 kilowatt hours, you go to tier 2, and you're buying your kilowatt hours at 30 cents. Once you go through that baseline allotment, typically up to 500 kilowatts, you're going into the high usage charge of 37 cents. So once you're in that high usage area at 37 cents, all of your kilowatt hours for the rest of the month are coming out of that higher tier. Now this is for the folks that are on a time of use account. Still through Southern California Edison, on the left-hand side, you'll see the weekday, and the off-peak charge is 23 cents, and the on-peak charge is 54 cents. So during that course of that day, there's a 5-hour window where the cost of kilowatt hours between the hours of 4 and 9 are 54 cents, and basically more than doubling the charge of the off-peak window. Weekends are a hair less, but similar concept on the time frame. A month later, in January 2023, Edison had a rate increase, and on the tier scale, it went from 23 cents to 31 cents in tier 1, 30 cents to 40 cents, so it went up a dime in tier 2, and then tier 3, the high usage window, went from 37 to 50. So there's a lot of folks out there that their usage in December and January was the same, but the potential for their bill to increase was significant. And I know in my area, a lot of folks on Nextdoor were talking about why their electricity went up along with their gas charges. And it was purely related to the change in the rate amounts. On the time of use account, it also went up. It only went up a penny on the weekday charges in the off-peak, but it went up to 62 cents in the peak window of time. And this is going to be important in the conversation when we start talking a little bit about batteries, because what you're typically doing on your battery storage is you're generating your power during the day, you're storing on the battery, and then you're setting up your battery to discharge in that peak window. And what you're doing is you're mitigating the need to draw power from the utility at 62 cents because you're storing it locally on your battery and you're discharging it into your house in that peak window of time. We call that rate arbitrage. Now, solar's been around for years, and it's fantastic, but it generates a lot of power, but it doesn't have the ability to discharge that power at specific times like the battery does. So in this next shot here, this is called a duck curve. And this shows the amount of solar as we get into this area that is pushed out onto the grid and ultimately flooding the utility grid infrastructure. This is midday when the solar systems are overproducing. They're powering the home. There's a surplus out there. And then as you get into the evening, the head of the duck, that's when the generation cycles begin on the plants, because solar diminishes when the sun goes down and the generation plants need to fire up and create power. And Kaylee went into detail on net metering 3.0 and gave you a lot of good information. This kind of duplicates what she talked about, but the key point at the bottom here is the fact that at Swell, we have 2 weeks to get folks signed up for solar and battery storage, get the single line diagrams created, and get the documentation submitted in order to meet that April decision where you're going to be in net metering 3.0. So you can be grandfathered into 2.0, but we have to get that documentation created. So internally at our company, we have a 2-week window to get folks signed up in the system in order to meet that date. Now this is the complete solution. We talked about solar and we're talking about battery storage now. This is a cycle of a day starting at midnight on the far left, and that green is solar production. This is a nice June day. Solar production kicks in at about 6 a.m. and that green bubble is the abundance of solar production on the roof. The purple down at the bottom below the baseline is the battery being charged from the solar. So your solar system's generating power, the surplus power is going into the battery, and the blue is once the battery is charged, that's your power offset, and that power will go off to the grid for credits. As we get over here into the gold, that's your 4 p.m. window, and that would be your battery that you charged earlier in the day, discharging back into the house. So the benefit would be, one, you're mitigating those higher rate charges, but also you're getting a longer day period to utilize that clean energy on the home. Typically, when the sun went down without battery storage, your green bubble would be the end of the solar production. But now we're lengthening the day with the clean energy usage by the distribution of batteries. Why Swell? Swell is a unique company in the fact that we're working with utilities and our homeowners and our various partners. The interesting part is we've been in the industry for quite some time, and it's the only solar company that we've been with that actually works with utilities and has partnerships, whether it's Edison, whether it's PG&E and some of the subsets of their energy distribution points up in the Redwood Coast. You know, it's just an interesting concept because we're actually partnering with the utilities in our virtual power plants. And virtual power plant. Some of you folks may have heard the term virtual power plant, VPP. If you haven't, you probably will start hearing about it more and more. And it's just to simplify it, it's really just a distributed network of residential batteries that can be activated in a peak demand situation. So on my home, I have battery storage. My battery is set to match my rate structure, which has the 4 to 9 peak window. I participated in a virtual power plant last summer, and in peak demand situations, even though my battery was set to discharge at 4 to 9, Swell software could potentially override that and kick my battery on at 3 o'clock in order to alleviate a peak demand situation. So our customers are signing up for these virtual power plants. They're being compensated in order to do so, but basically you're utilizing your battery in the similar concept, but there's times that it could be called upon to alleviate stress on the grid. Exactly. Exactly. Your house isn't pulling power off the grid. Exactly. The Sierra Club and Swell partnership, which he spoke of, I mean, it's something that, you know, Swell believes in. We believe in the Sierra Club's mission. And basically, what we're looking to do is those of you that are interested in going solar or battery storage, we've got a $500 cash back to folks that are looking to go solar or add battery storage. And then those of you that do sign up with that benefit, you're also eligible for us to provide $750 back to the Sierra Club on your behalf. So Sierra Club is a concept and program that we believe in greatly, and we're glad to be a partner. Questions? Rocky and I, after the demonstration, we'll set up over here, and those of you that have questions about rooftop solar or are interested in getting some information and having a consultation with us in the coming week, we'd be happy to meet with you on the site over here. Okay. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
And so we have one more short story from George Vine here. He's going to talk about his own experience going solar. And then we're going to kind of take questions for Kaylee and these guys and George. So, sound good? Everyone with us? So George, you got solar on your house.
Yeah.
What was that like? How was it?
Well, I'll tell you. Yeah, so we bought our house in 2009. It was a house built in the mid-'60s. It's pretty beat up. We were anticipating spending a fair amount of money to rehab it. The first thing we did was the house had these old aluminum slider windows, and it was drafty. You'd just walk in the house and you'd feel the wind blow. And so the first thing we did was replace those windows with dual pane, low E glass. And this was, I don't know, back in 2010 or 11. We got a federal tax credit for that, so it worked out pretty well. The next thing we did was, like, several years later, we went out and got an energy audit of the house, where somebody, a group of people came in and did all these tests. They did tests on how often the air turns over in the house and what kind of insulation you have. They have infrared cameras that would photograph your ceilings and tell you whether they were insulating or not. And then they made a number of recommendations of things that we should do to improve the energy efficiency of the house. And we did most of those, not all of them. We have a cathedral ceiling in the living room that has no insulation at all. And you could look at the infrared photos and it was bright red. But it was just too costly to try to insulate that, so we left it as it was. But what we did do is we blew in R30 cellulose insulation in the attics. We took out all the old fiberglass bats. We did some air sealing of the house. We replaced all the doors and all the sliding glass windows with dual pane. And then last year, in February or so, they were talking a lot about this switch over from net metering 2.0 to 3.0. And at that time, it was really a draconian 3.0 with that $700 a year solar tax. And they said if you could get your system in by like June or something, you would grandfather in the existing 2.0, and I decided, well, we better do it. If we're going to put solar on, we better do it now. And we actually went through a program at SCE. They hired a third party called Electrum, and Electrum went out and got you 3 bids and discussed the bids with you and helped you decide which was the best bid. And then they actually oversaw the construction. And so then we put in solar panels at the end of March of last year. And then in the summer, it became my goal to get rid of the gas service in my house. I still, I skipped over the heat pump. So sometime before the solar panels and after the glass, after the windows, we put in a heat pump and replaced 2 gas furnaces that heated the house. And we didn't get anything for that. We didn't get any incentives or tax credits or anything for that, but it was like a critical step. And then after we put in the solar panels, the only things left that were gas was a dryer and a hot water heater and a gas range. And so during the summer, we switched out all those. We got an induction range instead of the gas range. We got a heat pump water heater instead of the gas water heater. And we got a heat pump clothes dryer instead of the gas clothes dryer. So then in like August or September, I just called the gas company up and told them to come and pick up their meter. And they did, but they, as it turns out, we had paved over where the valve, the shutoff valve from the street was. So they had to make a big hole in our concrete there. And they were going to fix it by, they brought out a bag of concrete and they were just going to patch the hole. And we said, no, don't do that. You need to replace the whole panel, not just the hole. And you need to dye the concrete so it's the same color as the rest of the concrete. And they said, okay. But then later, 6 months later, they came back and did it. I was surprised. Since we've had solar panels since the end of March, I've been monitoring how they perform, and right now it appears to me, and I'll know within the next 2 months, that we got enough solar credits in the summer from generating excess power that is going to pay for our entire electric bill during the winter. So I think the net result is the only electric charges we have are what they call non-bypassable charges, which amount between $25 and $41 a month that we have to pay whether or not you have solar. And that's my electric bill, basically. And so the solar panels right now are paying my gas bill, in effect. They're paying my electric bill. And we have 2 electric cars, which we charge from the garage in the evenings, and it's paying that. So I have no gasoline bills, I have no gas bills, and a minimal electric bill. So my experience is it works pretty well. We don't have batteries, and we don't have batteries because the company that SCE hired to oversee the whole solar panel process advised us not to get batteries. They said batteries are too expensive. So we didn't. And now, if we're at the point where I generate enough credits to cover my entire electrical bill, there's no financial incentive for me to get a battery. So that's, I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't think I'll be in the market for a battery anytime soon. So that's my experience.
Good question.
Yeah.
How much did your energy bill drop with the solar and glass? You already done your installation in windows. How much did your energy bill drop once you put that installation in those windows and doors?
I don't know, because I did it over a period of time and I wasn't really tracking it that closely. So I can't tell you how much it went down. I know that I had ginormous gas bills in the winter because we had two furnaces. We had 8 tons of gas furnace power, and they heated the house up really quickly, but it cost a lot of money. It was, yes.
You gotta also comment about how much safer your house is now from an earthquake without having the gas in your house.
Yes.
But I was just wondering, so you could, in a blackout, your solar would work.
No, you need a battery if you want blackout protection. In a blackout, the whole thing shuts down, and I'm blacked out just like everybody else.
Your car.
Oh, you know, I've thought about that. My cars are not designed to feed the grid, but it seemed, I've read articles that said people have gerrymandered something that, because your car battery is like 3 times the size of a home battery, and yeah, if you could do that, that would work.
Let's invite Kaylee and Gary and Rocky up here as well. But George, if you want to stay standing up, just love to keep the questions coming.
Yeah. What does the battery cost?
Around one battery is around 19,000. That's before tax credits and rebates.
19,000.
Yeah. After tax credit and rebates, about 13.
Maybe 7 years when you factor in the increases?
A lot of it depends on how large your electric bill is. You know, if you have a $100 electric bill, that payoff's going to be maybe 10 years. If you have a $500 electric bill, I can see it in 3 or 4 years. If you add a battery to that, then maybe 8 or 10 years. But 10 years is a long time. How long have you had your solar?
Not quite a year yet.
Okay, yeah. But what we're seeing, I would say, just solar only, 4 or 5 years at the most.
You could have $20,000 to your retail value too.
Yeah. Yep.
The second part of the question was, what happens after April 13th?
The biggest change is that the credit that you receive for the extra energy you send back to the grid, pretend you don't have a battery for a second. If you're sending it back to the grid, the credit you receive is going to drop from 30 cents per kilowatt hour, the situation George is describing, to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. If you're looking at that payback period, it means that for people who don't have a battery, the payback period will jump from an average of, like you said, 5-6 years or so, to more than 10. And that's something folks should take into consideration as they're trying to decide what to do. And that's why, as these folks are saying, the battery can help you sidestep that circumstance. Because what does it matter how much the utilities are, paying you for excess energy you send back to the grid when you're not sending it back? You're just putting it in your own battery and then using it for your home when the sun goes down or it's not shining or what have you. So I hope that helps.
And if you do sign by that date, how long do you have before you actually have to install the panels? First, I have to get it approved.
I hear you. You have 3 years. And so you'd have plenty of time to do that. And you just, again, want to make sure that the installer is submitting a complete and correct interconnection application that is devoid of major deficiencies. So, like, that there's no blank spaces on it. That's the theory. And I think that's what you should check individually. So Solar Rights Alliance has a policy that we don't recommend any particular solar installers. We think that would send us right down quite the rabbit hole, trying to decide which ones are better than others. We do have resources on our website if you're looking for some consumer guide information, especially if you're just starting from scratch, you're not really sure where to look or what the certifications are. Feel free to check out our consumer guide information. I think it can help you. You're also welcome to call us if you have specific questions. We can put you in touch with, information. These guys are here specifically to answer those kinds of questions. So yeah, an installer should definitely be able to submit a complete and correct interconnection application. And they know that they have to be really, really careful with them. They have to be right, complete, and correct. So we're all humans here. Installers are humans, utilities are humans, we're all humans. So human error may be part of the equation. We're all going to do our best to be as good as we can be.
And when you're talking about having to do a new roof first, so with Swell, what we're doing is we have an NEM2 reservation list. So you can sign up. We'll do the single line diagram. We'll do all the paperwork for you. There's no cost to do it. You can cancel, you know, you can do it a year later, but at least you're locked into that, grandfathered into NEM2.
So I think that's a good place to leave it. We're all just going to hang out, so if more questions, come on up and ask them. But I think we've all absorbed a ton of information. I know I've learned a lot. So let's give one more round of applause for our judges here. And thanks to the Pasadena group for hosting us. And, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.